So we should start. Hi, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us today for this very special online panel. We are going to in this panel, we're going to discuss the most pressing questions about the biggest topic in cloud IT, and those will be the changes to VMware licensing and bundling with the Broadcom acquisition. We want to discuss how it affects us as technology partners, as business owners, as cloud service providers, and so on. So the focus will be the future of your business, how it affects your business, how it impacts the IT strategies for companies that are buying and selling cloud. And of course, how any of those changes have created an even more pressing need for solutions that are based on open source technologies. My name is Ronnie Moyal. I'm your host from Virtuoso. We are joined today by three very special guests. We have, none in alphabetical order, we have Tim Timrawi, founder and CEO of SharkTech. Tim, raise your hand.
Hey.
We have Cliff Greenberg, founder and CEO of Livewire, and Jimmy McArthur, Director of Business Development at the Open Infra Foundation. Before I let my panel introduce themselves, some house clearing. In this panel, we will answer questions that were pre-submitted, but feel free to send us additional questions using the QA tool in Zoom. If you want, we can point you to where it is. If there are still open questions after the panel, please share them with us. We will follow up by email later on. One last thing before we begin, this session will be recorded. So you'll be noticed. We will share the link of the recording to anyone that was registered to the panel. Feel free to share it with whomever was not registered, but still need the link for this recording. Okay, so we'll get started. Let me see kind of where we are. So we are at 62 participants. I think it shows the level of interest in those changes, the level of, I would say, frustration and opportunity in those changes. So I'll introduce Cliff, followed by Jimmy and Tim. Cliff, give us a few words about you.
My name is Cliff Greenberg. I'm the CEO and founder of Livewire Cloud. We're an MSP-centric cloud service provider providing OpenStack, Proxmox, and VMware virtualization technologies in a private cloud configuration specifically to the MSP community. So we have probably a very different perspective than the other panelists based on who our end user community is.
Yep, very diverse and a longtime partner of Virtuoso as well. Followed by Jimmy.
Yes, Jimmy McArthur with the Open Infra Foundation. I do business development for the foundation. I've been here about 8 years, and my goal is to spend every day talking to folks around the world that are using OpenStack and using open infrastructure software, and see how the foundation can be of assistance.
Thank you. And Tim?
Hi, my name is Tim Timrawi. I'm the founder and CEO of SharkTech. We are a hosting provider that's been in business for the past 20 years. We started with infrastructure as a service provider with DDoS protection, and we moved into the cloud solution provider. And now we provide the public cloud solution services and bare metal services and private cloud.
Thank you very much, Tim. So with that, we do have a few questions that we want to cover, or the discussion will have some core questions that we want to answer. And the first question, I want to kind of hand it off to Cliff. Since I know your background, I know the type of solutions that you've supported. What are the main pain points that you've seen from customers and partners of yours with the changes with Broadcom and VMware and the bundling and prices?
Well, specifically, I think the biggest pain point is the new pricing architecture and the degree with which Broadcom came into the picture and put aggressive timeframes into the modification of the licensure structure. So yesteryear, before the Broadcom merger, everything was based on, vSAN size of pools and memory allocation and had nothing to do with core count or CPU. And today, everything is based on core count within each server. Initially, there was only a single VMware partner tier. And I think one of the biggest modifications is some existing partners weren't even able to become resellers. They were ejected from the community altogether. And the ones that made reseller status had to go and find a premier partner to procure their licenses from. So that's a very awkward go buy your licenses from your competitor because you're unable to meet the financial milestones created by VMware. And then, of course, the aggressiveness with which the program was adopted and the lack of communication across the industry. When is my stuff going to stop working? Are they going to honor my current, subscription program after the merger? So lots of questions, very few answers, then a lot of pushback. And then to throw insult to injury, they announced that they're selling off the end user computing division to KKR. So the VMware Horizon is now an additional quandary on top of your traditional vCloud Director and vSphere infrastructure solutions. So a lot of pain for a lot of people. I think the only saving grace is they introduced another tier to the partner communities that is a little bit more cost effective. But it's caused people to think dramatically about whether or not they're with the correct solution. And many people aren't going to be able to afford the new pricing structure. And then Amazon was removed as one of the premier partners. So we're going to see a lot of changes with respect to the way VMware is adopted and who is using it and how.
Thank you. Tim, you want to give us your perspective?
Yeah, I think it's a situation of the people that are developing the software are disconnected from the people that are administering the software and managing the systems. There seems to be it is a complex system. The people that are administering it are realizing that we're being stuck with solutions that they might change on a dime based on different corporate interests. And we are left hanging there trying to decipher complex solutions and complex alternatives instead of focusing on the business core, which is providing the service to our customers and making sure that our infrastructure is ready and available for our customers or our businesses. It's been difficult because VMware has been a trademark, system for the past couple of decades at least, and everybody seems to have, reached a point where we're relaxed with the system. It is, I hope, going to be an eye-opener and able to help the community recognize what is best for us to move forward without being dependent on single entities like VMware.
Mm-hmm. Do you see those changes in cost structure being rolled over to the customer 100% or being absorbed by the cloud service provider?
The cloud service providers are already, it's very complex time for us right now, and I am definitely sure that whoever is going to be succeeding in adopting or understanding the new pricing structures, it's going to be sent back to the customers, whoever decides to go into this. The problem then is who is going to be on the other side, right? Who is going to be ending up recognizing that, hey, we need to change and investing their time and resources in finding alternative solutions and recognizing the cost effectiveness of the other solutions and seeing that, okay, we're going to be able to compete. And that's a beautiful thing about, CSPs right now. We are still a competitive market. Obviously for us, not the top three providers. We're still a competitive market, and finding ways to provide a unique, cost-effective solution and a strong solution is still very important.
We do get some feedback from other markets. So the Americas, the margins are as such that, you know, some will be rolled to the customers from our perspective, some will be staying within the CSP, so the margin will shrink a little bit, but there is enough to sustain or for VMware to still be relevant. But we do see in other markets, global markets, where VMware was priced as such that it was just barely sufficient for the CSP to make any margin, because the customers will not be able to pay more than what they were paying. And with the changes, it kind of priced itself out of the reach of customers, even government entities. Do you guys see that happening here if, you know, whoever decide to stay with VMware?
I think I can answer that to some degree. I really believe it depends on how you run your business to some extent, and CapEx versus OpEx models. And most people have adopted cloud in an effort to move to a more OpEx pay-as-you-go type of situation, to be able to scale up and scale down, and to afford themselves the ability to maintain certain degrees of profitability through this relationship with the cloud vendors. And so much of that is being destroyed to some extent by VMware's aggressive adoption of 3-year commitments as being the only mechanism to bring your costs to a reasonable level. And so
also paying for the full capacity up front. So it's not pay as you grow, it's commit to the full capacity of your data center.
Correct.
Then
Figure it out.
Correct. So that first tier of partnership, the premier tier, is 3,500 cores, minimum 16 cores per server. You can imagine we started to look at, well, what if we took a processor out of the server, you know, and had to start rethinking everything from that perspective to try to create cost-effective models for our MSP partners. And when you do that, you degrade the server's performance and the server's ability to support other infrastructure such as memory and disk and PCI bus and other. I mean, there's so many affiliated ramifications, ripple effect down the road. So today we're seeing, like, on a pay-as-you-go models, no less than $35 a core per month, minimum 16 core per server. So a single server is almost $500 a month in VMware licensure at our cost under a pay-as-you-go model. And that's a dramatic increase over the prior licensure model, where CPU wasn't relevant at all in the VSCPP solution provider space.
So in a way, it does play to the hyperscalers, because it kind of shrinks the benefit of OpEx versus, you know, hyperscalers. So
correct.
If it was 30% or more reduction in cost, it shrinks that, and it does call for alternative for CSPs to be able to maintain, reduce the cost, and stay on the pay as you grow versus buy the capacity and hope you can sell it.
Correct. And then, you know, oversubscription was, you know, a possibility way back when, but now none of that is doable to some extent. And neither is the shrinkage model. Like, what happens if you have to lay off people? You're still stuck in this cost center at the resource pool that you committed to. So that's a difficult position to put yourself in.
Yep. Okay, we'll move to the next question, and I'll start with Jimmy this time. Do you think that this has created a turning point for adoption of open source based cloud? So from all we heard in question number 1, Jimmy, do you see that as a motivation for CSPs, for partners, for customers, enterprise customers, to adopt open source or OpenStack?
Yeah, I think Tim put it best, which is, you know, it's eyes open a bit this year. And I think, you know, 2024 is the year we all learned a valuable lesson, which is proprietary and single vendor open source software single vendor open source software, it makes your business vulnerable, right? And I hope what we take away from the end of the year is that multi-vendor open source projects with a healthy ecosystem are the way forward. You know, the question about, you know, locking in prices with VMware for 3 years, you know, CSPs have to scale up their entire infrastructure based on what their customer base looks like, right? And if you lose one of those, but you're still paying for all that infrastructure with a VMware license, you're out of business. And so, you know, you've got to look at alternatives. You've got to look at open source alternatives. And in my opinion, I think OpenStack is the way forward. You know, it's if you combine OpenStack and the situation with VMware with other trends in the market like privacy and data sovereignty, and what we're seeing with the need for greater compute power for AI workloads, OpenStack is a natural fit for that kind of thing. And I think, you know, VMware, for better or worse, has sent a message to the industry, and I hope everybody learns something from it.
Jimmy, you really like took the words out of my mouth on that one. I really hope so. I hope we as a community start recognizing the difficult positions we're putting ourselves in, taking the easy way forward. It is a problem, and I hope we recognize this as a problem and see alternative ways forward. What you brought in with the AI situation is very important. Do you want to end up in a position where you are locked, where you are unable to innovate on your own when a new technology comes in? Do you want to be in a position where you are dependent on a closed source kind of VMware solution that will end up put you in a position, well, I have to wait for them to develop this solution for GPU, for example, or I can work on the OpenStack solution that we have developed in a unique way to provide this type of service. Cost-wise, I mean, if you are in a CSP service and you see the price models that Cliff shared with us, and you think that this is okay, I'm really happy for you. This is just not how our industry works. And this tells you the disconnect that VMware has with the industry. This is just not how our business models ever work. We are very scalable. We go up all the time. We hopefully never go down, but you know, sometimes we have to be careful about when we have to go down, right? We have to scale down. We have to be cognizant about what should we be doing when we have to scale down. In those kind of scenarios, and how difficult it is to scale up and scale down, and the pricing model, which really puts us at a disadvantage. This is something to be taken seriously.
Yep. Thank you, guys. Cliff, anything to add on this question?
I think I'm going to pass on this one because I was verbose with the other ones, but I will have stuff to contribute later, I promise.
I'm sure. Okay, so we have our next kind of item to discuss is considering the current 2024 state of the economy and the IT trends in general. How does OpenStack, open source, provide a way forward to the business? So we answered some of it, but Jimmy, I want you to elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, OpenStack is a cloud computing platform that provides infrastructure as a service, whereas, you know, vSphere is a virtualization platform. And it's been a fine solution for a lot of folks for a long time. But if it's not cost effective, you've got to start looking around. And I think further, you know, in this day and age, you should be going cloud native. It's kind of the natural way of things right now. And avoiding vendor lock-in. You know, you look no further than, you know, obviously VMware, but also what recently happened with HashiCorp. Like, we're in a situation where, you know, you've got to be looking at open source in the same way that you would, like, Linux is the de facto open source OS. Like, why would you look at anything else? I mean, Linux won. And I hope we look back and see that everybody has moved on to proper open source solutions for their infrastructure as well.
Thank you. Tim, you want to add to that?
Yes, that's also, again, Jimmy, that's a great point. So, you know, when we started with Linux long time ago and FreeBSD and all of those, we recognized the open solution that it provided. Now we have reached the point where we are looking for something that orchestrates multiple systems at the same time, with infrastructure of networks, servers, storage nodes, and all of that. And we have reached a new layer in systems management. OpenStack is key on that, the same as Linux was for operating systems. Our ability to innovate on OpenStack is similar to how we were able to innovate back in the day on FreeBSD, on Linux, on OpenBSD. Without, you know, the support, without the FreeBSD, for example, SharkTech would not have existed in 2002 when we took on DDoS protection as a service as the first company that actually provided that. And now we're doing the exact same thing, and we're really excited. And for the first time, you know, in over a decade, my team has been absolutely enlightened and happy that we are able to actually innovate again, and we are able to create unique solutions that puts us out there on a different level. Yes, partnering up with companies, and now I'm going to put the plug for Virtuoso. Partnering with companies like Virtuoso that have dedicated themselves to creating solutions that makes the adoption of OpenStack possible is an important step. So OpenStack, as many know, okay, it's not easy. It's getting easier, it's getting better, but you definitely need guardrails. You definitely need help moving forward with it. And this is when we decided 4 years ago to go with Virtuoso, and Virtuoso has been that for us. The solution that they have created based on OpenStack has been tremendously helpful for us. It provided us the path forward and the opportunity for us.
Yeah, I would add to that, Tim, that there are a number of distributions out there, Virtuoso being one of them. And for folks that do need those guardrails, that's the beauty of OpenStack, right? There are distributions, they're enterprise grade. You can set it up and you can have the kind of service that you might have expected from VMware back in the day. But there's also, you know, just pure open source vanilla OpenStack. And for those folks that are capable and are interested, you can also set up and run a data center with a few engineers. You know, it doesn't, there's this idea that OpenStack is so complicated and so hard that you've got to have this team of 20 or 30 people to manage it and 20 or 30 people to set it up. But that's just not reality anymore.
No, that's a decade ago. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
Still,
So
if you need
if
to
you're
run
small,
a commercialized way, I think that Virtuoso and a few other ones, we're not the only one in the market, there are
which is good.
aspects of the source that you need to commercialize, and commercialization of a product is not in the nature of open source OpenStack. It's more about open. It's here is the kind of the source code. Here are the tools to create your own cake. Just and if somebody is taking all those great ingredients and making something that is easy for you to go to market and reduce your operation cost because you need smaller team, you can focus on selling to customers, collecting from customers. I think there's a service for the likes of Virtuoso, and again, we're not alone there, that commercializing OpenStack open source.
Oh, absolutely. So one sec, Jimmy, about that. So basically, we were able to create a billable hourly rate system, a cloud solution, a virtual data center environment for our customers, and build them on resources used on hourly basis, basically utilizing the Virtuoso tools and OpenStack for our customers. So this has allowed us to bring it on to the commercial side significantly easier than we have if you ever have gone straight out to OpenStack and developed and took the time to actually develop the system directly ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, right now we are at the point where it's a couple of clicks on our website, and you're done. You have an OpenStack solution developed and provided to you as a customer, and you go with it. And this is amazing. I don't think we would have been able to do that without the support of Virtuos or OpenStack.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I have a slightly different perspective, Ronnie, than the other guys. I mean, for me, I view VMware as a virtualization technology, but not a multi-tenant cloud infrastructure solution. And VMware doesn't scale massively. It can certainly scale in a hyper-converged configuration to some extent, but nowhere near the capability and the ability to introduce heterogeneous hardware into the stack. VMware cannot do that. And so this is one of the biggest differentiators between OpenStack and VMware. OpenStack is a multi-tenant, multi-tiered solution with wonderfully written SDKs, and you guys help provide those and the proper API interfaces for it to do it. But the biggest difference is OpenStack scales massively and just gets stronger and more stable as you do so, in better performance, better everything, tiers of disks. I think the biggest challenge is it's not open to every other technology out there. So there's going to be technology adoption that are going to influence some of your strategic decisions in terms of embracing a virtualization environment, right? If you have expertise.
I do think it's part of the service air quotation that VMware is doing to OpenStack. The disruption will cause more of the ecosystem providers to reconsider OpenStack, to be part of OpenStack, to augment OpenStack, rather than focusing on a company that have an interest to grow, which is fine, but have an interest to have captive audience. And to do that, you make sure that you are able to sell them vSAN, you are able to sell them products that are working in your closed garden, which is all fine because this is the motivation of the company. That's why they were bought by Broadcom. But
Sure.
if you bring open source OpenStack into that, it's a more noble approach because it's not about serving one market segment. It's not about serving the need or of the investors of Broadcom. It's more about serving the community. And if you take the flavor of OpenStack that you need and commercialize it correctly, you answer more use cases than the one that are driven by your investors.
Honestly, I don't know why Broadcom bought VMware, but that's
well, the only reason a chip manufacturer would buy virtualization technology is if they want to embed the technology into the chip. And the latest release, get this, is Broadcom might buy Intel, which that one blew my mind. So that's the latest press release that I read the other day.
I could see that. Like I could see that fitting more the Broadcom mentality. Like I could see them buying Cisco, for example, maybe. That makes sense. Buying VMware has never made sense to me. But then again, it happened and doesn't need to make sense to anyone, I guess.
Time will tell. Time will tell. So actually, that leads us to the
Time
next
has
step.
been telling.
Do you think that Broadcom VMware changes have created lasting distrust in the real stability of established platform? This is
I hope
like
so.
perfect segue to that. So,
well,
Tim,
I would love to tease. Oh, it's Tim's turn. Okay, go Tim.
I really hope so. You know, I really hope that we're reaching the point that we're starting to recognize how important it is to be cognizant of the systems that we're using and who is behind those systems, and knowing that, you know, building a system that requires specialty hardware, specialty software, and being dependent on those, and then saying, oh yeah, now they're scaling up the price on us and then increasing the prices on us, and then we're left with a situation that we simply cannot afford because they do not recognize the type of businesses and the models that we are providing. That's a big problem, and I hope we have reached the point that we learned our lesson, and we're starting to look seriously at OpenStack as we did for Linux back 20 years ago.
Okay, and Cliff, your chance.
I think that past behavior is a wonderful indicator of what your future behavior is going to be. And if we look at Broadcom's past behaviors and the companies that they bought, dismantled, and practically destroyed for a piece of technology that they were interested in, and the list is fairly lengthy, Computer Associates is the one that comes to my mind initially, but
LSI.
all those products have, evaporated from our technology, from the technology ethers. So I think the motivating factors of an organization like Broadcom are kept very close to the heart, and it's not going to be divulged to us. And we're not in sync with them. The communities that support and provide these services have different motivating decision-making ideas and concepts about providing infrastructure as a service and other. We are not aligned with the vendor in our goals, and that's the biggest challenge. I think we were previously aligned with VMware. I think they recognize their own strengths to some extent, but now I have zero confidence in the future direction of the product, and we're already seeing them tear it apart even further. And I think they missed the boat in some regard. At Tanzu, to run Kubernetes and Docker containers within VMware was a joke. I mean, I don't know anybody that embraced it or used it. But here's another big differentiator with regards to OpenStack. It natively supports, containers and microservices, which we all agree is the serverless way of the future, right? And so if you don't have a technology platform that can support future solutions that are imminent and being developed every day, then people aren't going to have a choice but to jump ship and find something that works to meet their needs at the end of the day.
And
Yeah.
Tim, you want to add?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's, as I mentioned earlier, if you want to go cloud native, OpenStack is the way to go. And, what we're seeing and what we see with our users is everyone's running workloads. They're running Kubernetes on top of OpenStack. It's a natural fit. And, who's not running Kubernetes these days? And I think, that's just the way of the future. And unfortunately, I think it's a sad tale about VMware, but I think it's an opportunity for open source communities to embrace a bunch of new users and show people that it's the right way to move your business forward.
Okay. Now, with that, do you see any other leading technologies that kind of on the precipice of being bought, sold, changing their kind of DNA? Is it so? I don't want to name names, but there are a few other technologies around virtualization that have kind of the same approach. Proprietary hardware, closed garden. Do you see this wave of companies being bought, changing their DNA, moving from focus where the customer partner being the focus to let's turn it into a cash machine? Do you see any
this is the way these days, unfortunately. There's a lot of investors out there. There's a lot of business opportunities out there that they're looking at well-established software development companies to take them on and basically take on customers that are already locked in a solution and taking advantage of it for as long as they can, for as much as they can. It's unfortunately we're seeing it, and it's not only in virtualization platforms. It's in
Yeah.
a lot of software as a service providers situation, and a lot of customers are ending up being locked in in these situations with really, even when they have an alternative, it's extremely difficult to see it because they are so busy with the current situation that they are in, that it's difficult for them to see alternatives.
Yeah, and I think it's also, I was going to say, I think it's important to understand why multi-vendor open source projects and a healthy community around an open source project is the most important thing when choosing an open source project or choosing software. Proprietary is one thing, but when you have a single vendor open source project that switches the license on the fly, and all of a sudden you're just as locked in as you would have been with VMware, that's bad as well. And so, companies that are this is why, in my opinion, companies that are kind of masquerading as open source, but they're really not, they don't have an ecosystem built around it. They don't have other partners and organizations committing to that open source project and keeping it healthy, then you're going to run into that problem. And, this is the reason that pure open source is the best way to manage to make software decisions.
So Jimmy, your best advice to any partner that is looking to move from VMware to any other solution is don't make the same mistake twice. Don't jump from one closed garden to another closed garden, from one company that was ripe to be sold to another company that is ripe to be sold with a closed garden.
That is absolutely my position. And I would say also, there's, people tout VMware because it had, well, first of all, it was around forever. As Cliff points out, there's a big ecosystem around it. I think those things and that security of having the service contract and things like that, those things exist with open source projects. It exists with OpenStack. There's a large ecosystem around OpenStack that does things like backup, monitoring, metering, storage, data recovery. Those things all exist, but it hasn't been at the forefront of a lot of those organizations, and they haven't been pushing it because OpenStack, for lack of a better word, has a tough reputation. And it's something that we at the Open Infra Foundation and we with our ecosystem partners are really trying to overcome. And I hope that this is an opportunity for people to see that this is a safe place to put your workloads. OpenStack is a safe place, and it's a great place for you to run your infrastructure. So hopefully that message gets through.
I'm in agreement with Tim. I mean, I think our job as cloud service providers is to educate our potential customers on the capabilities and the best practices to embrace open source technology. And I think security is tantamount to any solution that's out there. And I have to tell you that the Virtuoso OpenStack is hardened and has withstood the test of time with respect to vulnerability and assault. And even though you can layer additional security on top of it, that is a really important component to providing cloud services.
Absolutely,
I can tell you that
Cliff.
the moment you're exposed and have compromised customers, that's a very bad day for everybody.
So absolutely, Cliff, I'd like to add on to that. I mean, this is the most important part right there. For us, security is a multi-layered approach. Security is being able to use independent systems to protect each other, to create a layered approach into security. Using something like OpenStack, we are able to utilize, third-party software, third-party firewalls, appliances in front of these systems to protect them, to analyze the data going to them, and they are completely independent of our OpenStack environments, right? And we are able to say, okay, this is something that right here. So in case of any vulnerability that's going to happen in the stack, it is segmented. And we create basically air gap situations where we are able to address the issues. We are able to do that with OpenStack solutions, right? We're able with open source solutions. We are actually able to create unique solutions that us, the ones in the trenches, are seeing and recognizing, and we do not have to go back, write a recommendation to a VMware that in all likelihood is not going to align with their business models, or something they're going to be like, oh yeah, we can create a new system to add on top of this, because hey, that's another revenue stream for us. No, we are able to work with the open source community. We are able to develop our own solutions and bring it in, and be a unique solution provider out there as well.
Now, quick question. So the wave of customers who are looking for alternative to VMware started somewhere around November 2023 with the changes being announced a little bit before, but kind of the big wave, the front of the wave was November till today. Do you see the community of VMware customers or partners that are looking for alternative? Is it ending? Is it in the midst of it? Is it depending on where your contract is done, when you need the hardware refresh? What's the feel?
I think I can take that one. I think the big fear was what's going to happen on, like, I think it was originally April 4th is when, the transaction concluded, and supposedly the former licensure was completely supposed to be becoming null and void. A number of European organizations got together and started a class action against VMware, and they really ruffled the waters. And then VMware started to backpedal a little bit and started pushing out deadlines. So far, we haven't seen anything be rendered unoperational. So we're not seeing license revocation or anything ugly like that. So I think that I think they're going to leave it alone, and I would recommend that they leave it alone, and let people do the appropriate level of due diligence on alternative solutions if cost is the driving factor behind the change that they want to see coming forward. And then they created, I didn't get to mention this before, they created the vSphere Foundation licensure program, which is a much less expensive tier to the Cloud Foundation tier of licensure. And so there's still a lot of questions in the air as to where you can adopt each one of these two license programs and how you can use them and who's allowed to use them and so on and so forth. I think much of those questions are still trying to be unraveled from the license providers. And remember, now you're going to a premier provider who has to go to VMware or to a tier above him. And then, so VMware pushed, or Broadcom pushed, all of the support down to the partner community. That is a major modification to what they were doing before. And hence you've seen huge layoffs within the organization. And I think that's just going to be their demise, to be honest with you, because what compelling reason does my competitor have to properly support me or provide the correct answers to remedy a problem when, I think it's a preposterous design in the first place. But
I think it was a stopgap. It wasn't meant to be to start with. They created a vacuum, and then they figure out, okay, there's a big vacuum. What do we do in the meantime before we do the real thing? And then they put those aggregators or in-between tier just to help. I wouldn't call it to help, but to help themselves prevent even bigger erosion. Do you guys see it the same way?
Yeah, I think going back to your original question, Roni, I think that we're at the start of the wave. VMware has 45% market share, and we're seeing interest from every company that we talk to. And in fact, we recently polled our member companies, and 82% of them have already received interest from organizations seeking a VMware alternative.
Yep.
And 61% of them have already migrated VMware customers to OpenStack. And we're seeing interest globally. That's 13 countries in 5 continents. And I think, you know, we're at a spot here where we're going to see massive interest coming through the rest of 2024, if not 2025. That's my opinion.
It's
Sorry.
definitely, I think it's the time of the opportunity, right? Like the time for opportunity for people that are recognizing what's going on and deciding, okay, this maybe is the time for us to take action. The earlier you are in this, the better you are positioned in the market, and the better that you are at adopting this technology and benefiting your business.
Okay, thank you guys very much. We do have a few questions from the audience. If you don't mind, I'll go through them and we'll try to answer them. Again, if anybody at the audience have more questions, please feel free to post them. If we won't have time to answer all of them, we will answer them via email. So VMware has been a market leader in virtualization. This is a question that we got earlier today. VMware has been a market leader in virtualization for nearly 2 decades, and it integrates with many other software and hardware products. How long will it take open source community to replicate the features, functionality? Cliff, you want to start?
Sorry, I was typing an answer. Could you repeat that question?
VMware has been the market leader in virtualization for nearly 2 decades, and it integrates with many other software and hardware products. How long will it take open source to replicate?
So that's a tough one, right? This is all about which vendors want to hang their hat on a cart, right? And this was what I was inferring to before. In our world, managed service provider world, as IT professionals, we hook ourselves to various carts and create tool sets that we educate our team members on and invest time and energy in embracing and learning and optimizing and using those tools to the benefit of our end user customers, right? And so when you make those investments in tertiary products that are married to your virtualization technologies, you've locked yourself in to some extent there monetarily. And so it's got to be us who drive the change and put the requests out to the Veeams of the world and Zertos and, you know, whatever other, you know, tertiary add-on third-party technology you've adopted, RMM and PSA tools and other things. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to continue to support our end user requirements and make sure that their stuff is rock solid and safeguarded. And the virtualization technology shouldn't really be the biggest component in that decision-making process, right? Because at the end of the day, I think reliability is your number one. Reliability and security are your number one considerations.
And I would add scalability to that.
I agree, except that the SMB marketplace is typically a smaller ecosystem, and so scalability from that perspective isn't as important to the end user. There are enterprise grade solutions out there that need massively scalable solutions, and yes, Virtuoso's OpenStack has the ability to scale to thousands of nodes, and there is hardly any other products out there today that can accomplish that objective.
So thank you, Cliff. Do you see the pressure building up on the likes of Veeam, Zerto, and others to adopt open source as a venue for their products? Where if we look at Veeam, for example, they were very much locked into VMware. They had no interest. They actually actively pushed back on adopting open source or being open to open source. Do we see pressure mounting on those companies to adopt open source, to open themselves to OpenStack?
It's a business, you know. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a business, right? Is it in your business interest as VM to actually have an open source solution? And to what end is that? Are you going to end up closing that open source solution eventually? We've seen that happen before on Linux as well. It's at the end of the day, it's a business. So if you're going for that, I hope that your trust is put in the right place here, because at the end of the day, it's a business model. Yeah, that's very concerning.
Dirty secret, Veeam actually has OpenStack backup. So just for the record, they just don't talk about it. But
well, they do have it, but it's agent-based, not agentless. For 100% replication of what they've done with VMware, if there would have been 100% replication into OpenStack, I think that it will allow them to maintain their market domination. If not, they will lose a lot of customers.
yes, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that's the way the market's going, and that's, to Cliff's point, is these companies are going to have to adapt, right? As OpenStack adoption increases. I would like to address your original point, though, Roni, about like how long does it take to replicate these features for open source? And I would argue that OpenStack is already there. You know, it's not, maybe it's not agentless Veeam, but there are backup solutions, there are recovery solutions, there are storage solutions, monitoring solutions. Like this all exists. And in fact, OpenStack just had its 29th on-time release, built by more than 70 organizations. I would say that OpenStack is as rock solid and flexible and nimble as, if not more so, than VMware ever was. You know, it's a mature.
I wouldn't say that it's because, or it's for any lack in OpenStack. It's just a commercial business decision by the likes of Veeam and others that they want to be able to maintain their closed garden relationship with VMware. But now, where this garden is kind of breached and customers are running away, do you want to lose this market share just because of convenience, or do you want to open yourself? For sure, OpenStack have all the features to bring in the likes of Veeam and to enable their functionality on OpenStack, but it takes two to tango in this case. We have another question. Does OpenStack have a bright future after Red Hat gives up supporting it in favor of OpenShift? Jimmy, I think I'll hand it to you.
Sure. So first, I would say that, you know, as I mentioned, OpenStack is mature and fully baked, and we've got a broad ecosystem with the support of over 700 organizations and a community of 110,000 people that are working on looking at using part of the ecosystem. It's not just Red Hat that is part of OpenStack. Now, Red Hat played a big part in it, sure, but so have organizations like, over the years, Rackspace, Intel, VexHost, OVH. I mean, the amount of contributors and the amount of organizations that have been a part of building the OpenStack software is huge. I would also add, OpenShift runs on OpenStack, or at least OpenShift can't run without OpenStack. So it's, to me, that's kind of a non-question, but I get that that's the market perception is that.
Yeah. And also, I think OpenStack reached a momentum and a critical mass that is self-sustained. So it does require a lot of support from other technology providers, but it can diversify with technology. It can grow on its own inertia.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we are about 4 minutes to the hour, and we have plenty of questions. So what we'll do, we'll answer those the rest of the questions and the ones that are in the webinar itself via email, via communication that we will send to you. With that, I would like to thank my panelists, panelists for their time. And the audience, of course, thank you for taking an hour from your time and joining us. We had at the top, we had about 76 participants from across the world. That's quite surprising. I know that it's not a very comfortable hour in a lot of other time zones. So thank you all for joining us, and we will try to make more of those webinars to kind of educate on the progress of OpenStack and how we can commercialize and drive better adoption of OpenStack to the customer needs. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.